just to keep people safe. So, I mean, we got Seven Dust, we got Medea, we got traffic issues. I guarantee you, Clay and Buck don't roll out like this. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you, it's only on this show that you get that combination of odd things. But so safe to say we're officially past the 4th of July vortex now. Everybody, they've blown up everything they have to blow up. They've eaten all the leftovers. They've used up all their time off, and everybody's back to living the mundane lives they lived before.
I'm already seeing Halloween decorations out in some stores.
Oh, no. What is with people here? Can't we just be in the moment, people?
Yeah.
See, for me, my life is just a party. So that's an inside joke for somebody. Somebody got that. But parties weren't meant to last. So, we're going to be taking a look at a few things on the show today. Because I'm feistier 9 to noon. To be honest, noon to 3, like for me, the natural sort of metabolic crash, my circadian rhythm starts dropping beats at about 2 o'clock.
Oh, 100%. Same. It's nap time.
Yeah, it's like it's not a time to like have to talk nonstop. It's not
be engaged.
In fact, in real life, I don't talk at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I stop talking at about 9 o'clock at night. Ask my wife. If she says something to me after 9 o'clock, it's going to be a grunt or, if that, because I use up all my words by 9 o'clock at night. But anyway, we're going to be taking a look at a few things on the show today. Number one, we're going to look at the surprise success of the movie Sound of Freedom and hopefully give some context. We're going to be looking at it, through a few different lenses. And just, I have not seen the film yet. Saw, trailers and different things, kind of, I'm on that Angel Studios, list where you get about 18 emails a week. So knew it was coming, but we're going to talk about that. There's a Biden whistleblower that's living on the lam, kind of like the old movie The Fugitive. He's out there looking for the one-armed man. We're going to check in the Empire State. We talked about New York City and just a wackiness update on New York City a couple weeks ago. But we're going to talk about the governor, Kathy Hochul, and she's trying to keep up with New York City and what she's doing. And, I'm thinking about doing something new. I'm thinking about doing a call-in quiz later in the day. We're going to, there's a question. I want to see what people think. I want to get some responses and see what people are thinking. But as always, thanks for joining us today. And as always, we're here. We're on a mission to make America think again.
Let the cartoon begin.
Yes. See, Mac knows me. It's like, with Prince, first of all, you rehearsed more than you ate. So the band was knew every single, if the right eyebrow twitched, you knew what was coming next.
That's cool.
And we had this thing that we did that he stole from James Brown, where he would take his guitar and go, do it move. And when he did that, the band went bam. So, Mac and I are like that now. Mac the Knife, Mac the Knife, Mac the Nice. He knows when to let the cartoon begin. So, as I mentioned, and we'll go ahead and kind of crack the seal on this one now, but the movie Sound of Freedom, it's more like the sound of box office at this point in time. There's always, in the film business, music business, book publishing, same thing. There and it's good that there are always surprises. There are always these success stories that, the vested interests, the fat cats, that they don't see coming. And especially in this age of not left versus right, not red versus blue, but reality versus unreality, the stakes are higher because anything that represents reality, anything that represents, sanity, if it succeeds, there's some people that just embrace it, and there are other people whose heads explode. And that's just, that's the facts, Jack. So undoubtedly, many of you have been hearing about the film starring Jim Caviezel of Passion of the Christ fame, and released by Angel Studios, the folks behind the crowdfunding phenomenon, the episodic series The Chosen, have heard about this film. And many have seen it, many more are talking about it. And to say the least, it's having an impact on a number of levels as we speak. So we're going to take a look at it today on, as I mentioned, on several different levels. We're going to look at it from the angle of the box office story, the backstory of the film itself, which is interesting, and a common kind of a cautionary tale that becomes a Rudy story kind of thing. We're going to be looking at a little bit at Angel Studios and their approach to the funding and marketing of films, because it's an interesting thing. Here's the thing about clear thinkers. Clear thinkers, we embrace and we celebrate the free enterprise system. I would venture, I haven't done the research, I don't have the data, but I think I can make a pretty educated guess that there are a higher percentage of, clear thinkers, conservatives, if you wish, who are entrepreneurs and business people than any other sort of, affinity group within the general population. Because the values that clear thinkers, conservatives, et cetera, embrace are the values that are necessary to build and sustain a business. So anyway, we're going to look at the business itself. And then we're going to look at the so predictable and predictably vitriolic response from the unreality cohort. Now, remember, on this show, we call, whatever name you want to use, the left, progressive, neo-progressive left, whatever. We use the term unreality cohort because they are those that embrace and represent unreality. They are the knights who say no. Anyway, so I think it might be good to go to a break now so I can kind of, dive more deeply into the story. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the sound of freedom. Ain't it the truth? Dez Dickerson, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Be right back.
We're up to a 16-minute delay now due to that crash in Goodlettsville. It has the left lane blocked, Vietnam Veterans Boulevard westbound right there at Conference Drive. And some police activity. The off-ramp right shoulder blocked from I-65 southbound to Rosa Parks Boulevard. One of the nation's biggest banks getting hit with a big fine. We'll tell you why and which bank coming up at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Wow. A bank is getting fined.
A big bank getting fined.
A big bank. Well,
Customers might be getting something out of this.
hey, now would that be something other than a toaster? You know?
Yeah.
And I think you have to deposit like $8 million to get the toaster.
Right,
I think
right.
That's how that works.
Either that or everybody shares in it and you get a check for $3.50.
Exactly. Hey, I'm in the wrong business. But at any rate, actually, this is probably a good time to not be in the banking business. I'm just saying. So we're talking about Sound of Freedom. And, you know, it's everybody loves a David and Goliath story. I mean, unless, of course, you're Goliath, and then it doesn't end well. But in this case, the film it's an action thriller exposing it. And again, a lot of people have talked about it already, but we're gonna look through our sort of funhouse mirror at it. So it's an action thriller that exposes the child sex trade, starring Jim Caviezel, as I mentioned. But it sold more tickets heading into its July 4th opening than the much ballyhooed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny film. It topped, the opening day box office, topped the charts with 14.3 million in ticket sales at 2,634 theaters. The Indy Jones film came in second. And we're going to talk, as always, what you do with the numbers, you can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. And there are some people that decided to make the numbers say something else. We're going to talk about that a little later. But the Indy Jones film came in second with 11.7 million in sales at 4,600 theaters, 2,000 more theaters. And then Disney's Elemental kind of brought up the rear with 2.8 million at 3,650 theaters, distant third. So for perspective's sake, the Sound of Freedom, the budget was $14.5 million. The Indiana Jones budget was $295 million. Now, anybody that understands the basics of business, cost of goods sold and margins, all those things, it's better to spend $14.5 million on a film and do 14.3 the first day than to spend $295 million on a film and do 11.7 million the first day. I mean, that you don't need a calculator for that one. Okay, Sound of Freedom did 2.6 million more at the box office opening day than the Indiana Jones film did, but in nearly 2,000 fewer theaters. So they did more margin per seat by far than the blockbuster did. And then they went on to do 40 million in the first 6 days with Sound of Freedom, rather. So all the way around, that's colossal for a small indie movie. Now, in the interest of keeping it real, because that's kind of an apples to apples comparison. The feel good story for the 4th of July. That's we're looking at a small sample size. So in the broader scheme of things, Avengers Endgame 2019 did 357 million.
Ooh. Gosh.
357 million.
Great movie.
It was a great movie. I mean, the whole series. I mean,
yes.
What can I say? It was a bummer with the blip. I didn't know how to feel about certain people, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
There were certain characters, and you knew that Downey Jr. was tired of Iron Man. But anyway, I could go down that rabbit hole. But
My fault.
That's all right. Because every once in a while we got to see if there's any rabbits down there. But this was pre-COVID. Okay, so it was pre-COVID and before the combination of COVID and the already sort of burgeoning popularity of streaming really hit a tipping point. So obviously, we'll never see numbers like that again. We're not gonna see first day numbers like that again on a film, a theatrical release. Not gonna happen. But that said, Freedom essentially fully recouped day one. Dial of Destiny will lose a ridiculous sum of money till Jesus comes back. It'll never recoup. I don't care how many ways they find to try to monetize that thing. It will never, ever recoup. And, that's kind of the film business. The 2 or 3 blockbusters pay for the 20 flops, and that's the way that goes. But, okay, so Sound of Freedom, written and directed by a Mexican director named Alejandro Monteverde, and I could have put more flair on that, but it's too early in the morning, and produced by a fellow Mexican producer named Eduardo Verástegui, I think. Eduardo, my apologies because I probably got your name wrong. So they completed shooting, and I'm assuming that somehow, I don't know how they funded it, and I'm assuming this was what we call in the film business a negative pickup in some way, that it was funded independently or, through pre-sales, whatever the case might be. But they completed shooting in 2018 and had a distribution deal in place with 20th Century Fox. So you finish an independent film, you got a distribution deal in place, and then you work out, your distribution and your release dates, blah, blah, blah. But what happened in the interim, and this is one of those cautionary tales in the film business, happens in the record business too. In the interim, 20th Century Fox was acquired by, guess who? Disney. And Disney, once they acquired 20th Century Fox, which is what happens in these kinds of acquisitions, they went through the upcoming release schedule and decided there were things that they weren't going to release, things they were just going to shelve. And one of the things that they decided to shelve was Sound of Freedom. So they ended up releasing the rights of the film. Some sort of fire sale. Angel Studios scooped it up. And likely, again, for a fire sale price. I remember their actual crowdfunding goal back in the beginning. It was listed at $5 million. They wanted to raise $5 million to underwrite this film. So with post-production and all those kinds of things, what they call P&A, prints and advertising, kind of an archaic term because it's not advertising, it's marketing. But the cost brought them up to that $14.5 million all in. So we're going to talk some more about this after the break. Talking about Sound of Freedom, talking about some of the inside baseball, but we're going to talk about the backlash as well. Dez Dickerson, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be right back.
9:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Another crash. This one on 24 westbound at the I-40 exit 52 here in Nashville. The right lane is blocked there, 24 westbound at I-40. And then in Goodlettsville, you still have Vietnam Veterans Boulevard westbound down to one lane. The left lane is blocked. That's a 15-minute delay by a crash. One of the nation's biggest banks, probably not going to crash, but it's getting hit with a massive fine. Federal regulators ordering Bank of America to pay more than $100 million to customers. Bank of America accused of withholding credit card rewards, double-dipping some fees, and opening accounts without consent. Right now in Middle Tennessee, a Wilson County School Board member is proposing a policy requiring teachers to tell parents if their kids are transgender. News 2 says debate was heated at times last night.
I will have you removed. Time.
Some parents said it is the duty of a teacher to let parents know, while others say it endangers kids. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. Two big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. Think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. And it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
Yes, indeed. I hope you're ready. I had to wait for the break. Got to have that. I just noticed as many times as I've heard that song, there's like a little 808 kick drum drop in that intro. The 808 it's this. There's an old drum machine called the 808. Was it the Roland 808? Somebody will text in and straighten me out. But it had a kick drum sound that became very popular in hip hop and dance music and different things. It's totally unusable as a kick drum on a normal record, but anyway, very popular. So there you go, corn in the morning. And again, I guarantee you, Clay and Buck ain't rolling like this. This I can tell you. No, I like them. I'm just having fun this morning. So we're talking about Sound of Freedom, and we're talking about, I'm going to get to the culture war, blood and guts, but that's the story everybody jumped to immediately. So I wanted to come at it at a different angle and kind of, get into what is an amazing story with respect to the box office side. We, in our little company, we kind of pivoted into or stumbled into the film business 5 years ago or so. And it's actually goofier than the music business, believe it or not. And more fraught with danger than the music business. So it's a fascinating story, trust me. And it reminds me of how often there are just disasters that don't work out. And I got to tell this one real quick. If there are any Monty Python fans out there, and we tip our hat to Monty Python from time to time on this show. But there's a guy named Terry Gilliam who was the guy that did all their like crazy animation stuff and all those very, very odd, almost hallucinogenic things that he used to do. The only one in Monty Python, by the way, that was an American. He was from Minneapolis, from my hometown. But there's a film, an independent film that he did that actually took 17 years to complete. It's called The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. 17 years. So it's a strange business. And for anything like this to happen, it's a miracle in very real terms. So Angel Studios, the company that distributed, that put out the film, they were founded in 2014 as VidAngel by the four Harmon brothers and another friend of theirs in Utah. And it's centered at the time on filtering technology to remove offensive content from film and TV. So you could be sitting with your kids and, watching whatever, and it'll take out bad words and it'll, fast forward. So you don't have to sit there with the remote with your thumb resting over the fast forward. It did all that stuff. Now, great idea, right? But problem was they didn't think through proprietary rights and all that stuff. So several major film studios sued them for copyright violations in 2016 because you can't mess with people's content that way. And so the Harmon brothers decided to sell the filtering service business and focus on producing original content that would be, family-friendly stuff they could watch with their kids through crowdfunding. Now here's the thing about crowdfunding. It's not new. It's been around a long time. It's been used well. It's been abused, and, it's one of those things. But they sold VidAngel and they rebranded the company as Angel Studios in 2021. Now, in 2016, you went backwards to raise money to try to defend themselves from the lawsuits and have money to operate. They did what was called a regulation. I don't want to get too deep in the Kool-Aid, but Regulation A plus securities offering. That makes you kosher for the crowdfunding thing. They went out with a goal of doing $5 million to kind of get their eyeballs above water. After 28 hours, they had met that goal, and they crowdfunded over $10 million after 5 days. So in 2017, they connected with a writer-director named Dallas Jenkins, who had a partner, an executive producer named Daryl Eves, who was like a social media engagement whiz. And they got this whole big band together to release The Chosen. And their goal was to produce and stream this sort of multi-season episodic TV series about the life of Jesus and the disciples. They raised $13 million in equity crowdfunding to finance season 1, which was the largest amount ever crowdfunded. So they got that part down like early on. And then the success of The Chosen kind of gave way to this new business model, et cetera, that led them to the ability to do a lot of different things as a new sort of a model of distribution, of content production, all that kind of stuff. So all of that went down. And that was part of the story of this film being made available, a film that Disney rejected. And now all of this comes together, and this film has this great success. So we used to have a saying in the rock and roll days: the brighter the light, the bigger the target. The brighter the light, the bigger the target. Never forget it. There's another version of it. There's Hosanna 1 minute and crucify him the next. Just never forget that. So along come the haters. Now understand, anything that we celebrate, the cohort will denigrate. It's going to work that way. So, we've got both industry hate, but we've also got sort of garden variety, sort of, leftist sort of cohort hate. Now, on the industry side, Hollywood hates the crowdfunding methodology that Angel Studios has developed because they have vested interest. They have the system, they have the money, they have all those things. And it's, it's not just the film business just like that. I mean, it's like that in pretty much any industry silo, any industry sector where you have people with vested interest and dominance and trying to protect that position, fairly or unfairly, scrupulously or unscrupulously. I mean, that's historically the case. So they hate that methodology, and more specifically, what they really hate is how much committed support Angel Studios has. That's really what it comes down to. Now, I mentioned earlier that someone decided they would play games with the reporting and the tallying of the box office numbers. There's a publication called Deadline Hollywood, whose emails I also get because, I try to keep up on that stuff. And they send out more emails than anyone known to man. I mean, whole other story. But they went so far as to claim that Indiana Jones officially won July 4th because Angel Studios is using, and this is a quote, they're using a crowdfunding platform known as Pay It Forward to spur its ticket sales. The technology is billed as empowering moviegoers to purchase tickets for other people. So their claim is, well, because people are paying for tickets, and then there are people that are getting free tickets, and people are going to theaters with tickets that they didn't buy. Well, that's never happened before. So because of that, it doesn't count. You got to put an asterisk by it. So meanwhile, the CEO of Angel Studios, Neil Harmon, he says that Pay It Forward is, in their sort of celebratory press release, he says, quote, Angel Studios' Pay It Forward technology propels Sound of Freedom to the #1 movie in America on July 4th. He goes on to say the industry's tossing and turning to even understand what we're doing. They don't really know how to even process that we've created a new way for box office to increase drastically. So that's the inside baseball on the industry hate. So on the other side, and this is what's, been discussed a lot and gotten a lot of play. On the other side, the cohort predictably knee-jerked into deep unreality on this thing. And several leftist media outlets have slammed Sound of Freedom, claiming that, and you've heard this, that the anti-child trafficking film is some QAnon fantasy for, quote, conspiracy-addled boomers. Now, that quote comes from a Rolling Stone article. They published an article titled Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brain worms. First of all, Rolling Stone hasn't mattered since like 1986. Can we just be real for a moment? And it's kind of like, Rolling Stone is kind of like the guy that won't leave the party, and people want to go to bed, they want to go to sleep. You know what I mean? That's Rolling Stone magazine. Why is there still a Rolling Stone? Really, seriously, why is there still? So the author accuses the movie of fomenting moral panic for years for years over this grossly exaggerated epidemic of child sex trafficking, grossly over-exaggerated, and presenting a, quote, hackneyed white savior narrative. Now, that's just classic cohort speak, because it goes to the whole imperialist, white whatever thing, and I don't know the ethnic background of the person that wrote the article, but my guess is, so he attempts to argue that there are worse social issues that should have higher priority than child trafficking. And that's what it always comes down to. So, well, we should be dealing with this. We should be dealing with the poor and the homeless, and we should be dealing with police brutality and mass shootings, and we should be dealing with, the fact that we don't have, free health care. We should be saving the planet and dealing with the climate, because there are people who are dying and starving because of climate change. And, they don't bring any data to back any of this up. But so over and over, here's their accusation. The far right turns to these sordid fantasies about godless monsters hurting children, as if it doesn't exist. So there's another article in The Guardian where the author claims that Sound of Freedom was funded by, quote, an unsavory network of astroturfed boosterism among the far-right fringe. And you know what? You know what the reality is of that whole pay-it-forward nation? It's folks, it's families. It's folks that go to church and try to teach their kids to be good citizens. It's grandmas and grandpas. It's small businesses. In some cases, it's churches or church youth groups. In some cases, it's folks that aren't necessarily church people at all. But it's just like the thing was with the Tea Party. They made it up to be this horrible, monstrous, like fringe thing. And if you went to a Tea Party rally, it was folks pushing strollers with their kids and grandma and grandpa. And anyway, so we're gonna wrap this up after the break. We're talking about Sound of Freedom, and that's what we're all about. We're about the sound of freedom. Dez Dickerson, 99.7 WTN. We will be back in a moment.
Freedom.
Still got that crash in South Nashville, the right shoulder block, 24 westbound at I-40 westbound. You got a big bank hit with big fines, a Middle Tennessee school district debating a transgender student policy, and there's a new #1 on the music charts after 10 weeks. Finally a change. These stories and more coming up at 10 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
See, I remember, when I was in high school. Now I'm going into old timer mode. The big controversial issues were whether or not we were going to get like a soda machine in the lunchroom.
Pizza on Friday or Thursday.
Yeah. And now it's turned into like, what? Anyway, one of the many reasons. And God bless all you warriors out there that work in the government school system. But that's why I just will not put a child of mine in. I will not put a sweet child of mine in one of those schools because it's crazy. Okay. So we're going to wrap up. The conclusion of the matter here with the Sound of Freedom thing is it's very hard for people who advocate the sexualization of children to condemn the sexual exploitation of children. It's really what it comes down to, because there's scarcely any daylight between the two. Because in reality, the U.S. State Department says that 27.6 million people could be victims of human trafficking at any time. Child trafficking isn't some delusional conspiracy theory when at least 1.2 million children are trafficked every year worldwide, over 18,000 in the U.S. Any so-called journalist who refutes its existence or worse, mocks those who take it seriously, that's utterly reprehensible. So on the one hand, they claim to be champions of the downtrodden, the exploited, and the marginalized. But in moments like these, they show who they really are. So here it is. The irony of the whole thing is that the film industry wants to cry foul because of the ticketing methodology. The cohort simply despises anything that they believe even smells conservative or Christian. Made myself cough. But Disney, the ones with the dial of destiny egg on their faces, they chose to orphan the film in the first place. They tossed it out like trash. So to channel Coach Boone from Remember the Titans, Sound of Freedom just broke off its figurative foot in Disney's John Brown hind parts. Dez Dickerson will be back in a minute.
Ten o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 2 minutes. Regulators ordering Bank of America to pay more than $100 million to customers, more than $90 million in fines. The bank is accused of double-dipping some fees, withholding credit card rewards, and opening accounts without consent. Bank of America is the second largest in the United States, serving 68 million people and small businesses. Right now in Middle Tennessee, Wilson County School Board members and parents coming off a heated debate over a new proposed policy.
I will have you removed. Time.
Parents had a chance to weigh in on whether teachers should be required to tell parents if their kids are transgender. News 2 says Wilson County Director of Schools Jeff Luttrell said he's tired of politics distracting from more important issues like teacher retention.
I've had more teachers reach out to me in the last 72 hours than I've had in 2 years as a director. and the same thing I'm hearing, we can't take any more. Don't put any more on us.
School board member Joseph Padilla is proposing the policy. He says telling a parent if their child is transgender is like telling a parent their child has ADHD. Now, no votes have been taken. This is in the discussion stages at this moment. Entertainment news. After several months, there's a new #1 song in the country. We get more from Jason Nathanson.
I've made some real big mistakes.
No mistakes for Olivia Rodrigo. Vampire, her first single from her second album, debuts at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart. It's her third #1, and it knocks Morgan Wallen's Last Night out of the top spot, where it's been for the past 10 weeks straight. and 13 weeks overall. Rodrigo's first single, Driver's License, from her first album, also debuted at number 1, making her the first artist to debut their first 2 singles from their first 2 albums at number 1. She's also the only artist born in the 2000s with more than 1 chart topper.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
I love this song. You know, I listen to a lot of commercials, obviously, in this role. And I'm starting to feel like I'm the only Fatty McFatterson here that's not on a weight loss program.
You got me, Brother Dez.
All right. Well, Ken, you and I need to get some wings and hang out.
I'm up for it, man.
I'm like starting to get a complex about it. But at any rate. No, in all seriousness, well, I'm just not going to go down that road because this weird things have conspired to. Anyway, the weight things, it's a sensitive thing for me right now. I'm just kidding. Because I'm not a sensitive guy.
I was going to say, really? You look great.
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm on the right side of the dirt and just feisty. So, it's a good day. So, and again, Dez Dickerson and, Mac the Nice, Brother Ken Weaver, we're keeping it real. And we hope you are too. Because there's reality and there's unreality, and those are the two choices. But we're going to pivot. We're going to pivot to a common topic that it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's Biden's DOJ, and there's another whistleblower. This one's missing because of a series of unfortunate events that we're going to talk about here. But there's a whistleblower who told both the FBI and the DOJ about Biden's illicit dealings with China all the way back in 2019. And he's released a video basically because he's in exile. And he's trying to tell his side of the story, without being thrown in a dungeon or shipped to a gulag. So a little drink of my magic organic juice here. It gives me a jolt, a legal jolt, by the way. So there's an article in PJ Media that we're going to read some from, and we got some sound we're going to play as well. But a mole in the U.S. Department of Justice shared classified information with Hunter Biden and his Chinese partners and tipped off the Biden family about an investigation into their corrupt dealings with a Chinese energy company with spy ties. And the feds arrested a whistleblower overseas to stop him from getting to the U.S. to testify to the House Oversight Committee. You can't make this stuff up. These are among the explosive allegations the missing witness in the Biden family corruption investigation has revealed in a video from a secret location. The man, Dr. Gal Luft, an Israeli citizen who once headed a Washington and China-tied think tank with former CIA Director James Woolsey, released a video this week explaining all the above allegations and more. The New York Post's Miranda Devine broke the story while the rest of the country celebrated Independence Day and cocaine was found in the White House, which is a whole other thing, but I'm not going to go there. That's such low-hanging fruit that I'm not even going to do that. Luft explains that instead of being on the lam from the Department of Justice that wants to put him away for what he says are bogus arms and foreign FARA charges, essentially, he was forced to release a video to tell his side of this extraordinary story. He says his first mistake was, quote, a fatal decision I made in March of 2019 to share with the U.S. government my knowledge about the Biden family's relations with CEFC, the Chinese energy company that had ties to the Chinese Communist Party's intelligence agency. So, again, the backstory is this guy was a senior advisor to this Chinese energy company for 4 years. At the same time, the Biden family, was having dealings with them.
Mr. Wise guy over here.
Yeah, you and Corn Pop. I just love the way, quick sidebar, I love the way, during the campaign, he was like wanting to pick fights with people. Calling people, dog-faced pony soldiers or pony-faced dog, whatever. He was like always wanting to break bad with people. That was hilarious.
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true.
I just hope I hope he does run so we get to see some more of that, because this should really be entertaining the next time. Anyway, I digress. So at the initiation of Dr. Luft, there were 2 days of meetings at the U.S. Embassy in Brussels with the FBI and the DOJ, two prosecutors specifically from the Southern District of New York, which is, don't even get me started, and 4 FBI agents. So tell you what, Mac, let's play clips 1 and 2 from this.
I insisted that the meeting take place in March because at the time there were rumors that Joe Biden was planning to run for president. I saw it as my civic duty to alert the government beforehand and give it enough time to probe the issue. I want to be clear. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I have no political motive or agenda. I did it out of deep concern that if the Bidens were to come to power, the country would be facing the same traumatic Russia collusion scandal, only this time with China. Sadly, because of the DOJ's cover-up, this is exactly what happened.
So, and again, you can't make this stuff up. So he essentially, lets them know, hey, I've got this information, and I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not, a right-wing, conspiracy theorist. I'm just a concerned citizen because this is scary. So he even gave them a description of this person that he had discovered to be the mole. And specifically, it was a one-eyed man. Now it's really starting to sound like a TV show. And one of the FBI agents in that, during those 2 days of meetings in Brussels said, well, okay, that should make it easy to identify him because there aren't that many one-eyed agents in the FBI, which that's a whole other wormhole in itself. But that was what was said at the time. Now, he told the two prosecutors, the two DOJ folks, and the 4 FBI agents that Biden, soon after his VP term ended, attended a meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C. with Hunter and officials from the CEFC. So let's play clip 3.
Over an intensive two-day meeting, I shared my information about the Biden family's financial transactions with CFC, including specific dollar figures. I also provided the name of Rob Walker, who later became known as Hunter Biden's bagman. Yet, as we now know today from the whistleblower testimony, Gary Shapley, it took the DOJ a whole 21 months to probe the issue and to actually talk to Walker. But perhaps the most alarming information I revealed was of a mole within the DOJ who shared classified information with Hunter Biden and his Chinese partners.
So I actually got ahead of it. So he told him about this mole, and he told him that he'll be easy to spot. He's like a one-eyed guy, and he's a senior guy, and he and Hunter Biden are, like doing the whole spy, like meet me in the park and wear brown hat thing. So we're going to go on to the next clip. But I mean, again, you can't make this stuff up. Let's play the next one, Mac.
The information I provided the FBI in March of 2019 was fully corroborated 9 months later when the famous laptop belonging to Hunter Biden, which contained all the emails and receipts, was handed to the FBI. And guess who seized the laptop from the computer repair shop? It was Special Agent Joshua Wilson, who was with me in Brussels earlier. In other words, the FBI knew about, from me, about the Biden CFC deals before they got hold of the laptop, way before. They had enough time to investigate the issue, but they didn't.
So, I mean, the information that he gave them predated the emergence of the laptop, but completely corroborated the validity of both the laptop and his information. And lo and behold, it was one of the folks that was involved in the Brussels meetings who kind of did let me hold that laptop. We'll take care of this. You can't make this stuff up. So after all this happened, there was a point where the FBI and DOJ turned on Dr. Luft and began a 4-year sort of persecution campaign. First, he was harassed along with his family, his friends, his associates. Then he was prosecuted. On the eve of the 2020 elections, his attorney met with then acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue to confirm that he had the info that Dr. Luft had shared in the Brussels meeting. And they later found that Donahue himself suspended the investigation on the grounds of it being too close to the election. So, okay, we just want to make sure, Deputy Attorney General, that you have this, like, frightening information that I shared with, 4 FBI agents and 2 DOJ prosecutors. Oh, yeah, I got the information. And then he turns around and he suspends the investigation, not really because it was too close to the election. That was his cover story, but it was like too close to exposing the whole deal. So Luft was arrested in February of 2023 on an extradition request of, guess who? The Southern District of New York. The same folks who first met with him in Brussels out of a mutual concern for national security, whatever. And a 7-count indictment that holds the potential for like a 100-year prison sentence was handed down. So let's play the remainder of the clips.
And perhaps the biggest question of all, why am I being indicted for FARA, for ghostwriting an innocuous article for which I received no payment, let alone from a foreign government, when the mother of all FARA cases, the Biden systemic influence peddling on behalf of foreign governments for which they raked millions, goes unpunished? Let it sink in. I, who volunteered to inform the US government about potential security breach and about compromising information about a man vying to be the next president, am now being hunted by the very same people whom I informed and may have to live on the run for the rest of my life.
So he summed it up best himself. The man who tried to do the right thing now ends up being someone who may, in his own words, have to live on the run, live on the lam for the rest of his life, looking over his shoulder. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back to this. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson with you.
Still got that crash, South Nashville, 24 westbound at I-40. The right shoulder is blocked. Still looking for rape victims. Franklin police manhunt for a jail escapee west of Nashville. And in Middle Tennessee, pastors say they will address KKK recruitment flyers left on church marquees. Details coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I somehow missed that at church on Sunday.
That's a good thing.
You know, what did they leave, like flyers back by the donuts and coffee and the...
Now, these apparently were under the, on the marquee, I guess, recruitment flyers.
On the marquee, wow. I mean, it would really be bodacious for, like, a guy in a hood to be, like, standing at the door, like, greeting.
Now, that would... Yeah, kind of like the mattress sellers.
There we go. There we go. Well, hey, you know, nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me. So now, bear in mind this whole scenario that we're talking about here. This person, Dr. Gal Luft, is actually like a critical linchpin in terms of being a key witness in what the hearings in the House Oversight Committee regarding Hunter Biden's ties to the CEFC and this whole sort of Chinese, because here's the deal. You can't do business with the Chinese without doing business with the CCP because they're one and the same. So this witness is not just, you know, some tangential bystander. This is critical because everything that he has said, everything that he's borne witness to, is corroborated by both the laptop and the testimony. I mean, they've laid out the payment schedule. It's all been introduced in the hearings. So Luft disclosed during the Brussels interview that the CEFC was paying $100,000 a month to Hunter and $65,000 a month to his uncle Jim Biden, which was laid out in that committee hearings, in exchange for their FBI connections and use of the Biden name through the Skywalker. Now, they also paid Hunter Biden $1 million for, in the words of Luft, God knows what. But again, he's on the lam, and Hunter is evidently like forgetting to pick up his cocaine in the White House. I don't know what's going on. So, according to the doctor's account, the former Vice President, Joe Biden, was present at these meetings at the Four Seasons, and it was corroborated 21 months later when the FBI interviewed this Biden family associate, Rob Walker, and that's been testified to in Congress. And as I just said, during the Brussels interview, the doctor disclosed the specific payments, et cetera, et cetera. So here we are in July of 2023 with Joe Biden, at least physically, Joe Biden is in the Oval Office. Not sure how much of his mind is there, and I'm not trying to take a shot. I mean, it's a serious issue. It's a serious issue. People, you know, Ronald Reagan began to develop symptoms of dementia in his time in the Oval Office, and you know that's one of those criticisms that people have leveled in the years since his passing, et cetera. That it was really Nancy Reagan that was running things. Well, as is always the case, when the shoe's on the other foot, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But he's in the White House, he's in the Oval Office, and the usual suspects are undoubtedly actually at the wheel. Who do I mean by that? Well, it's Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Samantha Power, who may be the scariest of them all, Susan Rice. And, we joke about Hunter leaving his coke I just joked about it. But, man, could any of this be any more hideous than it actually is? If someone would have told you 15 years ago that 15 years from then, all this would be going on, you'd say that's so preposterous you couldn't even make a movie out of that. Well, it's not. It is preposterous, but it's reality now. So here's what I want to do with this. I want to conduct let's have a little pop quiz. Let's have a little call-in quiz. And you can text in, but you know what? It's more fun when you call in. It's more fun when, we can get you on the air and you and I can have a conversation. So here's the question. Will orange ever be the new black for the Bidens? Are we ever going to see anybody in an orange jumpsuit doing the perp walk? Are we ever going to see that? And not just the Bidens. I mean, anybody, any Democrat, any meaningful Democrat. Or will the historical trend of the cohort and the Democrat Party in specific getting away with murder, is that trend going to continue? I want to know what you think about it. Call in. Let us know. Or text your answer. But at this point in time, express your opinion. Is there ever, and I know a lot of people have given up. A lot of people have just kind of thrown up their hands and just kind of, this is just the way it's always been. It's the way it always will be. Well, a defeatist attitude is not going to help. It's not going to help. Do you really want it? That's the question. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
.30 on the dot this Tuesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Franklin police working to find children suspected of being raped by a soccer coach. Camila Hurtado Campos, accused of drugging kids, then recording as he raped them while they were unconscious.
It's a variety of drugs that he was using. Some sleeping pills, some prescription pills, a big variety of different things.
As Police Lieutenant Charlie Warner, who says Franklin police have been able to identify 3 of the 10 victims they knew about. 5 more alleged victims have come forward. 87 miles southwest of Nashville, people being told lock your doors and cars, keep your keys on you. News Channel 5 says a manhunt's underway in Perry County for an inmate who escaped from jail. The sheriff says Jamie Henson made a hole in a chain-link fence to get away. He is not considered armed and dangerous. And then closer to Nashville in Murray County, pastors in Columbia plan to hold a press conference tomorrow to address KKK recruitment flyers allegedly found on 3 church marquees. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. 2 big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. Think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. And it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
All right. Time to find out who's okay and who's not okay. And I got to tell you, there's a lot to not be okay about. So I pastor a church that meets in Columbia. I missed the memo on the Klan flyer somehow. I don't know what happened. I'll have to check into that. We got a couple folks that have called in. You know, our quiz is, do you think that anybody is ever going to pay a price for all of this criminal activity? Will orange ever be the new black for the Bidens or anybody else? Or will this historical trend of Democrats walking scot-free, is that going to continue? So, Joe and Franklin, where do you stand on this? Orange jumpsuit or scot-free? Joe, what do you got for us?
Yes, sir. Well, I'll make this short and sweet there, Dez, and good talking with you, too. I enjoy your show.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like if anybody in that whole side from Biden, Clinton, all of them down, if any of them ever go down, that house of cards is going to come down like a ton of bricks. They're all going to fall. So I think it's going to be hid in the deepest, darkest, corrupt part of the swamp. I don't think it'll ever be found because when Biden goes, Barack's going to go, all of them's going to go. And that's just my gut feeling because the corruption is so bad there. I listen to the news and it almost depresses me just for the fact that I've never seen such a corrupt administration in my lifetime, and I'll soon be 72, and no one should ever talk about any other country about being corrupt. I mean, that's just my gut feeling about it.
I hear you. Well, I mean, it is the degree to which we've come to resemble like a banana republic in a lot of ways. We're a banana republic with better technology and more money, it seems. But Joe, thanks for your call and your perspective. And you know, I have to agree. I mean, here's the thing: there's so much stuff, and there's so much to lose on the part of the people who have gotten away so far. And personally, I don't believe you ever get away with anything. I believe there's always a price to be paid. I believe that there's no statute of limitations on divine justice, if nothing else. But man, there's the weight of all of this. If the threads ever start unraveling, if the dam ever breaks, man, it's gonna go all the way back to LBJ. I don't know. So we got Rodney on hold. Rodney, orange jumpsuit or clean getaway? What do you think, Rodney? What do you got?
Well, I would have to say the Democrats. Well, you figure what. They're never gonna see orange suits for one reason. What does D stand for? Democrat, right? But they also think that they got diplomatic immunity, so they ain't gonna go down for nothing.
Well, you would think they have diplomatic immunity at times.
Well, I mean that's what they perceive like they have diplomatic immunity. But I'm gonna end with the quote that late great Phil Valentine used to say, if it wasn't for double standards, the Democrats wouldn't have any standards at all.
Amen. Thank you, Rodney, for sharing that. And man, I miss Uncle Phil. I was just thinking this morning about thinking about Fridays with Johnny and Uncle Phil, and who they would have dancing in the booth. I miss that. That was one of the all-time like Friday things of talk radio. But again, good point there. When you can sort of operate with impunity in any nefarious activity, and all that's necessary is for you to have sort of the network, the mechanism in place to be able to suppress information or hide the truth. And what's worked with respect to, just in general, the cohort, but the Democrat Party is the sort of political outreach of the cohort. It's become that. Sorry, it is what it is. So if you have the apparatchiks in the media who are the willing accomplices to exercise the wherewithal that they have to control what makes its way to the public to the degree that they were once able to do that completely. Well, at that point, you can play the Wizard of Oz game. You can play the pay no attention to that man behind the curtain game. And in a situation where there's one microphone and you got ABC, NBC, CBS kind of controlling the mute button, I mean, for a long time, that was kind of an unchallenged game. But then there was a period of time, the bright and shining moment, from reference to Tea Party earlier, kind of the Tea Party, and then that kind of, they always find a way, kind of like with the Sound of Freedom film, what we were talking about earlier. They will always find a way, whatever we celebrate, they'll find a way to denigrate it, because that's how they roll. So we kind of, saw the Tea Party thing, and then they managed to cripple that. And then when Trump emerged, when the populism train started rolling, I mean, that scared them. They're still scared of it. Why do you think they're still doing the things they do? They're still scared of all that. So the bottom line is that the media was the key. The controlling of the microphone, the megaphone, that was the key. But then what happened is they managed to convince enough people, because the indoctrination, of the pre-K through, okay, you can vote now, that managed to produce some reinforcements. So they had a whole unreality phalanx that they could press into action. And now you got a whole new era of public unreality. And there was a point, I mean, if you were paying attention, if you were one of my clear thinkers and you were paying attention, there was a point you noticed during the Obama administration, really toward the end of his first term, where they just kind of totally came out the closet. And the things that they were trying to at least appear to be, diplomatic or open-minded or whatever, no, it was no longer that. They completely came out. So what we had then was there's a certain percentage of people that they believe are going to believe them no matter what. There's a certain percentage of people that they think they got them, hypnotized, as David Letterman used to say. And that's just that. That's why we're in such a critical time. That's why I say it's not about red versus blue, R versus D. It's about reality versus unreality. And are we going to earnestly contend for reality, or are we just going to kind of, sit back and let the forces of unreality convince people that the emperor's wearing clothes, because he's not? So we're going to continue this quiz. It's good to get a couple calls, but we're going to continue this quiz. Do you believe that orange will at some point be the new black for all the perpetrators? That was like a cable show, Orange is the New Black. I never really watched it. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but
we've got some answers via super text.
Oh, well, let's hear it. Share it with us, Mac.
One, sadly, no. Another person says, nope, the government's too corrupt. Not a single one of these people will ever see time. And then we've got someone saying the Hillary Clinton got away with the whole server thing. That set the bar for everyone in D.C. And someone says, 2474 says, when you add the number of votes Trump got and the number of votes Biden got, you have a number larger than registered voters. So how could it be a fair election from here on out?
And see, to me, that's the key. I've talked about this before, because I have friends that, they're very astute and they're talking about the inner workings of state and local governments and how things are breaking in terms of the polls and so on. But here's the bottom line, and Stalin said it best. It's not really about who casts the votes. It's about who's counting the votes. And I still think that's the greatest threat to our democracy, because you can control a vast nation of millions and millions of people. You can control that. We can control populations of billions. If you, as a relative minority, control the ballot box and the levers of power. It's really what it comes down to. So let's take a couple calls before the next break. We've got David in Hendersonville. What is it? Orange jumpsuit or smooth getaway? What do you got for us? David, you're on.
Hello there.
Hey, how you doing?
All righty. Love listening to you.
Thank you.
Well, we got the one side, but we got both sides that are involved in a lot of crooked stuff. And until the Republicans get a little right, then it's going to go on with both sides. The Republicans, there's quite a few Republicans that aren't on board with the right thing. And that's all I really got to say. Until both sides get the swamp cleaned up, it's never going to be.
David, I totally agree. Because here's the thing, and thanks for your call. It's why I say I'm not a self-identified Republican. Haven't been for a long time. Now, when I first fled the leftist plantation back in 1988, when I just went flat Kunta Kinte and bolted, I registered as a Republican in 1988. But there was a point where the rhinos started to outnumber the clear thinkers, and I could not in good conscience call myself a Republican anymore. I'm thankful that we still hopefully share some values in common, clear thinkers and the Republican Party, but I don't know. So at this point in time, there is dirt on both sides, and that's why it comes down to separating the clear thinkers from the Kool-Aid drinkers, because it's going to be the clear thinkers that make the difference. We've got Melissa on hold. Melissa's on I-24. I hope you're doing the hands-free thing, Melissa, and not because we talked about this recently, folks texting and talking on their phones while they're driving. Melissa, come on board. How you doing?
I'm hands-free.
Oh, awesome.
Sir.
See, my clear thinkers know how to do it right. Here we go.
You're in my ear. Well, I think they're already in orange jumpsuits, honey. They're already in a prison that they have constructed of their own bars. They just don't know it. Or maybe they do know it. But they're in so deep. They have to try to protect themselves, I suppose. I don't know. I can't imagine anybody with their television on yesterday seeing our president bumbling around, trying to talk to English bobbies with Prince Charles leading him around, like he's his caregiver. It's so embarrassing. Every day you get up, it's just embarrassment upon wrong, and the Bible says the people cry out. And everybody I know is crying out. And I tell you what, if you're not on board for Donald Trump, you're part of the problem. Because here we have a man who is willing to lay down his life, lay down his fortune, do not take a dime whatsoever to clean this mess up.
Well, Melissa, we're up against a break, but thanks so much for sharing. And it really does come down to people cannot sit back and lament. Going to have to do something. And it starts with people making a decision to contend for reality and do something about it. We're going to take a break here. We've got Kimberly on hold. Kimberly, hang in there for us. We're going to come back to you after the break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dez Dickerson. Be right back with you.
Think about what you'd think about.
A federal judge just gave Microsoft a win over the federal government in its deal with Activision. We'll tell you about it at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I thought Microsoft and the federal government were like divisions of the same corporation. Well, okay, sorry.
Maybe they are. Maybe this is just a ruse.
It could be. This could be just the latest version of the app, people. I don't know. So I want to make sure we get to Kimberly in Smyrna. You know, our question is orange jumpsuit or clean getaway? Kimberly, what do you think?
Well, I've got a lot to say about that. First, on that
you
morning,
got 2 minutes to do it.
Okay, so I don't think we're ever going to get any of it fixed without more oversight over the not over the DOJ, but over the FBI. What we need to do is what someone suggested a few weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, but to get the FBI out of Washington, they don't need a great big, huge new building like the Pentagon, and get them back out into the communities and into the big cities where they belong to fight crime. Because that's what they're there for. They're not there to help Joe Biden and his cronies. And so that, yeah. You know, it's like the last caller said, if we don't get Trump back in there this time, he gets back in there, or Kamala Harris, God forbid, gets back in there, well, how much, you know, we knew they were going to damage this country. I had no idea how much damage that it was going to be as bad as it really is. Who would ever have thought it was going to be this bad?
Well, evidently not enough people anticipated. I kind of jumped up and down and waved my arms back before Obama was first immaculated, but oh well. So here's the thing, and Kimberly, thanks for your call. I totally agree. The FBI and the DOJ and the State Department just need a good enema. They just need to flush the whole bit and start over, whether it's, Donald Trump or, Ron DeSantis or, whoever it is. There needs to be a hit the delete button and start fresh. We need to unplug it and plug it back in. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson with you. We will be back. Thank you.
$11 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. New developments in the federal government's fight to block the Microsoft Activision deal. A federal judge in San Francisco denied the Federal Trade Commission's request for an injunction to stop that deal from completing by July 18th. Well, the FTC can file an appeal. The feds claim the deal will hurt consumers by stifling competition in markets related to consoles, subscription game services, and cloud gaming. Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill on opposite sides of the recent deal to merge the PGA with Saudi-backed Live Golf. Ranking Senate Homeland Security Subcommittee member, Republican Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, says let it go.
There's nothing wrong with the PGA Tour negotiating its survival. Negotiations are often delicate, mostly private, and I fear Congress getting involved at this stage could have negative consequences.
Well, committee chair, Democrat Richard Blumenthal, says it tarnishes the future of pro sports in the U.S.
Today's hearing is about much more than the game of golf. It's about how a brutal, repressive regime can buy influence, indeed even take over a cherished American institution.
Big fine for a big bank. Bank of America being ordered to pay $100 million to customers and hundreds of millions more in fines and penalties. Federal regulators accuse the nation's second largest banking institution of double dipping on fees, withholding credit card rewards, and opening fake accounts. And Nashville just got a credit rating upgrade. Standard & Poor's Global Ratings, S&P, gives Metro and Davidson counties general obligation debt a AA+. Mayor John Cooper says it's the highest rating for the city in more than 40 years. Credit ratings are key in determining the interest rate which Metro will pay on its infrastructure borrowing. This report from S&P says Nashville's general fund reserves outgrew expenditures by 30% in 2022, up from just 7% in 2020. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Classic. Oh, well, by Fleetwood Mac. We got a lot of people saying, oh, well, in our quiz here. Oh, well. What's he going to do? Well, I tell you what they did back in back at the Boston Harbor. Well, I guess we're not going to go that far. So I might not give the answer that you want me to. So the number is 615-737-9986 if you want to participate in our quiz. I know we got some folks on the super text line weighing in as well. And Mac, let me know if we got anything worth passing on to the folks that's coming in via text. See, I don't, I've admitted this before. I don't monitor the super text line while I'm on the air because I don't want to say that I'm easily distracted, but I do, I function by focusing in. And if my focus gets broken, then, you know, I'm liable to chase a leaf across the yard. So I keep my eyes on the road, my hands upon the wheel, in the words of the prophet Jim Morrison. And that's that.
Well, that's the thing with the super text line too. You'll have like 4 or 5 texts like exactly on topic, answering the question, and then next one's like, "Hey man, look at this awesome restaurant that I tried." And it's like, wait, I want to see what they have for me to eat, and you're just all of a sudden you're not even paying attention. So that's fair. We've got some good super text, though, Des, answering your question of really is orange the new black, and will any of this Biden administration, any of the left, ever really pay for their wrongdoings? We've got a couple of super texts answering that question. They will not fall or ever be held accountable, just like with JFK and every other scandal that's ever been there. There will always be a fall guy, whether it's an innocent person or someone on the inside. Someone else will ultimately take the fall.
Wow. That's uplifting.
Yeah, that's great. That's super great.
And I know a lot of people are of that opinion, but anything else? Is anyone of the opinion that at some point something is going to be done? There's going to be some form of, retribution. Some champion is going to rise up. Anybody kind of coming from that side of the issue?
We've got someone. John is kind of in that ballpark. Dez, the children of God must pray for godly leaders and our leaders who will be greatly influenced by godliness to be elected. Then we must act as well. That must first take place for good to come. God is in control, even when we cannot see it.
And somewhere in there, you got to vote.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because here's the thing, the Bible definitely says it, and don't worry, I'm not going to turn it into a church service. But if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, then I'll hear and I'll heal their land. So does our land need some healing? Yeah, I'd say so. But here's the thing: it's the both and. It's the both and of citizenship, and you can't just pray, and at the same time, you can't just march or scream either. It's the both and of it. And as I said earlier, there are issues that are very, very much present on a local level with respect to the integrity of the voting process. Do something. You get involved in that, because that's an area that we have ceded to the left. And in so many major cities, those processes are controlled, but the fox is guarding the hen house. Anybody that saw the videos from, what was it? Not DeKalb County, but in Atlanta, and they're folks, they're wheeling in pallets full of votes at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Well, I'm sorry, but at some point in time, we let that happen. We let stuff like that happen, and I can't restrain myself. We have hundreds of thousands of people coming here to enjoy this wonderful Middle Tennessee land flowing with milk and honey. And God bless you. Have a pulled pork sandwich and some sweet tea, and y'all come back.
Woo!
But if you let your own state, your own city turn into a raging dumpster fire, do you let that happen? I'm sorry, but you let that happen. And no, we're not going to let that happen here. But at the same time, the lifeboat's getting pretty dadgum full. So we're just going to have to, kind of stand up and step up and, make some things happen. So we're going to keep taking calls and, keep texting, but the calls are more fun. The question, will orange ever become the new black for the left, for the cohort, for those who are responsible? Specifically, we've seen it come to a peak in the Biden administration just in terms of the visibility, the degree to which it's been brought out into the open. Has stuff going on? Of course it has. Yes, someone referenced, JFK. There was stuff then. There was stuff before then. There was stuff in the 19th century. But the bottom line is there's more of it out in the open now than there has ever been in the history of the republic. But at the same time, we have the pathology of unreality has now metastasized into the pathocracy. Pathocracy is systematized and algorithmically proliferated to the point where things that just go unchecked now, 20 years ago, people would have just absolutely refused to believe that what's happening now could ever happen. There are things that are happening now that I never would have believed would ever happen. So, again, call in, text. weigh in, but we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. So we're going to move on to another story. So I teased this earlier in the show. You know, we did a segment a couple of weeks ago kind of chronicling the cognitive dissonance in New York City. You know, the disconnect between soaring crime and cratering quality of life and the courses of action, on the other hand, that are continuing to be taken by the New York City brain trust, by the leadership. Talked about the fact that the district attorney there, he's more concerned about chasing Donald Trump. He downgraded 52% of all felony cases to misdemeanors. Stopped prosecuting, and he announced when he was elected, stopped prosecuting armed robberies of businesses under $1,000, which, and again, think about that. That means if you own, a bakery, you own a cell phone store, you own whatever, and somebody walks in and at gunpoint has you give them the keys to, the bakery, whatever. And as long as they stop at $999.99 worth of goods, they're not going to prosecute that, even though it was an armed robbery. They stopped prosecuting resisting arrest. Think about that. That's mind-blowing. Prostitution and trespassing. So someone can just roll up in your living room. They're not going to prosecute it. So they have prosecutors who won't prosecute. They have spiraling chaos. They have a crime-friendly mayor and district attorney. But instead of putting out the fire, they chose instead to come up with something new and to hammer, pizza joints and bagel shops to get them to reduce their wood and coal emissions by 75% in the name of cracking down on climate change. So they got a raging dumpster fire, but by golly, they're cracking down on climate change. They're tougher on climate change than they are on crime. That's their official position. Okay, so that's New York City. So meanwhile, not to be outdone, the governor of the Empire State, Kathy Hochul, and I'm probably going to give her a nickname before this segment's over. Kathy Hochul announced that she's made the state of New York a sanctuary state for those who have illegally, the operative word here being illegally given children sex-change drugs, hormones, or surgeries. The sanctuary state for those who have illegally now, irrespective of what your perspective may be, we're talking about the law. Illegally given children sex-change drugs, hormones, or surgeries. So we're talking about, at this point, we're talking about mutilation. The elements of the legislation are both extensive and ghastly when you look at it. Like so much of the cohort's political and ideological agenda. And it's a graphic representation of what I referred to just a moment ago. What the pathocracy in action looks like. When you take this pathology that is this ideology, and then you systematize it and turn it into a philosophy and a framework of governance, etc., now we're talking about something science fiction. So I'm going to read a little bit of an article. This is from The Blaze on this particular pronouncement that Governor Hochul has made. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has signed legislation into law that has made the state a sanctuary for those who have illegally given children sex-change drugs, hormones, or surgeries. Hochul finalized the legislation ahead of her appearance at the New York City Pride Parade. Oh, that was a well-timed event, wasn't it? According to Timcast, it's a webcast, podcast of some sort, which was co-sponsored by 4 New York State senators. Not surprising. Authorities in the state are henceforth prohibited. Think about this. Authorities in the state are henceforth prohibited from cooperating with investigations from other states into individuals who have broken related laws in their jurisdiction. So you are forbidden to cooperate with anyone who's actually trying to uphold the law. Individuals who have broken related laws in their jurisdiction. The state will not provide information about or arrest individuals who have been involved with what is colloquially known as gender-affirming care. We're going to talk about that in a minute. By those who support sex changes for children. Gender-affirming care. Remember, I always tell you that words mean stuff. We're going to come back to this in a minute. The changes also affect family law in New York. The state will not remove a child from their guardian if that person was attempting to, again, illegally, the operative word is here, illegally provide their children with a sex change. You know, with respect to family law, family court, traditionally, and this I know in first person, traditionally there's been a very strict and clear threshold with respect to here's what the law says. Here are what the state guidelines are. Here are state-mandated, court-mandated parenting plans, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't get to just deviate from that. If you violate that, you're doing some time. But here is the governor of the state of New York saying that if a guardian is attempting to illegally provide their child with a sex change, just leave them alone. New York State Senate Bill S2475B prohibits consideration of a law of another state that authorizes a child to be removed from their parent or guardian based on the parent or guardian allowing their children to receive, again, gender-affirming care in custody cases. Law enforcement agencies are barred from cooperating with or providing information to any individual or out-of-state agency or department regarding the provision of lawful gender-affirming care performed in this state. I stand, and this is Hochul talking, I stand together with champions of this movement who have joined us today to say no more. What, no more sanity? Hochul said, according to The Gothamist, I don't know what that is, Batman's publication, we will give you the template, the rest of the country. We will show you what you need to do. No, I don't think so. The state now prohibits the issuance of a subpoena in connection with certain out-of-state proceedings relating to health or related information about people who come to New York to receive gender-affirming care, and prohibits the arrest of a person for performing or aiding in the lawful performance of gender-affirming care within the state. New York has become a state where children can unequivocally be given sex changes without punishment from the government, as the bill plainly stated. Such a person cannot be arrested. So, and it goes on to say a police officer may not arrest any person for performing or aiding, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk more about this insanity when we come back. Super Talk 99.7, WTN, Dez Dickerson with you. Rounding the clubhouse turn, and we'll be back in a minute.
Microsoft just won a fight against the federal government. The PGA on the hot seat on Capitol Hill says it has to do it to survive, and big banks' customers to benefit from a big fine. These stories and more at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Honestly, I'm not real concerned about the PGA. and I'm not a golf hater. I actually participate, even though I can't swing a club anymore. Participate in a few different sort of charity things during the course of the year, but the PGA. Yeah.
I tried golf once and it was a disaster.
Well, it's a game for the clinically insane, but because it makes you crazy. But it's a very enjoyable, and for me, it wasn't about the game, because that's the part where it's like, folks just obsessing about their grip and. Slicing, dicing, and whatever. But it's more getting out, getting away from, the stuff.
Yeah.
Fresh air, hanging out with people. And then, after you play 9 or 18, then having yourself a beverage and then you get back to it. But it's, the PGA, they can take care of themselves. I'm more concerned. Here's my thing about this soccer coach, though, this local, story. As my mom would always say, that they need to put him under the jail. I mean, oh my goodness. Anyway, I'm going to leave that alone for now, because that could send me to 11. I could go to 11 real quick on that. So we got Brian on I-24, hopefully not standing in the median, but Brian, welcome aboard. Tell us, weigh in for us. What do you got?
Hey, man, just what you just mentioned with that soccer coach, there's some guy on Capitol Hill in our local state, Capitol Hill, I think, that wants to put a penalty of the death penalty on child rape cases. I guess you know about that. I haven't heard all of your talk this morning.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that one. I haven't talked about that one.
Yeah, kind of deep. I'm a Christian, so kind of weird to hear you, a rock and roller dude, have conservative views, because I think we all look at you guys as partiers and, liberal and whatever goes and love and all that stuff. But it's cool to hear you. You're very intellectual, and you have some broad ideas, and you're graceful, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
The thing I was going to go to was when you were talking about, especially New York State. My son was a police officer in the state of Tennessee for 8 years, and he noticed at a time that the prosecutors were turning on the police officers, bringing them evidence of a crime. And this was in probably 2018, 2019, before the craziness hit of COVID, and it got even worse, the summer of love in 2020 and all that. And he's no longer a police officer. I may have told you this before because I've called before. But they were not prosecuting, and my son was like, "Wow, what's going on?" And they just started some different way of adjudicating. The justice system was, he thought, falling apart. He thought, this is crazy.
So, Brian, what city was your son serving in law enforcement?
Well, he was a state trooper for a time, and he was also a city cop north of Nashville. I don't know who's listening, so I don't want to identify.
Right. I understand.
But anyway, he went through a tough time, and he's out now. Praise God, and he's in an industry that doesn't have to deal with the perks anymore. But he's still very keen on it. He did all the things he was supposed to do to be a police officer. I think he still is at heart. But he was fighting the justice system when he was the frontline guy. Well, and it got crazy, and you touched on that, and I'm thinking, when they lowered the marijuana deal, there's so many people using, we can't house them all. We can't build, they wouldn't build any prisons. He was seizing cars. A judge looked at him one time and said, because of you, we're having to rent a new lot because you're seizing cars, because that's the rule.
And that's the thing, and we're up against the break, Brian, but thanks for your call, because that is absolutely true, and it's not some sort of random thing. There's a concerted effort. $40 million of George Soros money went toward the campaigns of some of the far left DAs that we're seeing in places like Philadelphia and other cities, L.A. So bottom line, the flipping of the justice system so that law enforcement are the bad guys. And some of it was just, the laziness within the system. Well, we got too many cases. We got too many people there. We got overcrowding. Well, the reality is that the people have been put in place and entrusted with the stewardship of serving and protecting the people, upholding and defending the Constitution. So we're going to take another break. As usual, thanks, Brian, and everyone else for calling in. Phone lines are still open. If you want to come in and weigh in, we'll be back in a minute.
.30 on the dot this Tuesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Microsoft just won a court fight over the federal government. A judge in San Francisco rejected the Federal Trade Commission's request for an injunction to block Microsoft's $69 billion purchase of Activision, which the feds say will hurt gamers by stifling competition. The FTC can now appeal. On Capitol Hill today, a Senate Homeland Security Subcommittee hearing from representatives of the PGA about the recent deal to merge with Saudi-backed Live Golf.
We knew that a long-term fight with Live would be harmful to the players, fans, sponsors, and charities. We wanted to begin the negotiation while we were in a strong position.
Critics say it's a slap in the face to the families who had loved ones die in the September 11th attacks and could weaken U.S. national security. And one of the nation's biggest banks getting hit with a massive fine. Federal regulators ordering Bank of America to pay hundreds of millions of dollars, including to customers. They're accused of withholding credit card rewards, double-dipping some fees, and opening accounts without consent. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. Two big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. Think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. And it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
Oh, yeah. You know, had there not been a Sly and the Family Stone, there would not have been a Prince of the Revolution. I mean, you know, there would have been a band, but the the prototype, the archetype was Sly. And I'm sorry, this song is just cool. It just is. It just makes me want to just kind of kick back, put on some sunglasses, you know what I mean? But gotta love Sly. And Sly, like, he won a big settlement. I mean, they found him, like, living in his van, and there was, like, some sort of, like, royalty, a case where there was a decision in his favor, and he, like, ended up getting paid just barge loads of money that he was owed. So that's cool. It's always cool when there are stories like that. So, and I wanted to just quickly kind of refer back to our last caller. Brian mentioned that, you know, it was, he has found it interesting because you usually think of, you know, people from a music background, people that played in bands, whatever, as, you know, kind of being, you know, partiers and far left. And I mean, bottom line is I started very early, professionally at age 14. And, you know, I was at one point all of the above. Let's just keep it all the way real. But especially and specifically politically, the first two presidential elections that I voted in, I voted for Socialist Party candidates because politics was more a pose. It wasn't, you know, a well thought through set of values and positions, and it was a pose. And it still is for a lot of people to a great degree. It's what you want to appear to be so that you be as accepted as everybody else thinks they want to be. And that's really what it comes down to. So, I mean, all I can say is this. There's a friend of mine and I that joke I'm the ultimate outlier. But at the same time, I think it just proves that God has a sense of humor. He just said, I think I'm just going to mess with this knucklehead over here and prove that I can do anything. Because, you know, if he can take the kid that was, at least he thought it was a socialist and, you know, was pretty much high every day of his life from his sophomore year in high school until, anyway, you know, it's a wonderful thing. And that's all I can say about it. So we were talking about Governor Kathy Hochul in the once great state of New York and talking about some things that she has now decided to do to try to keep up with the lunacy in the city of New York. I just want to finish up in terms of the language of this law that she just signed into place. A police officer, and this is the law, a police officer may not arrest any person for performing or aiding in the performance of gender-affirming care. We're going to talk about that in a second. Within this state, or in procuring or aiding in the procurement of gender-affirming care in this state, if the gender-affirming care is performed in accordance with the provisions of any other applicable law of this state. And of course, you know, she also announced that she signed an amendment that required New York State employees to use preferred pronouns as well. So here's the thing. Here are the potential implications. And, you know, I could be wrong about this, and I would love to hear at some point an attorney's take on this. But it would seem to me that the way this law is written, the parental kidnapping happens all the time. I mean, people are bound by the terms of, you know, the parenting plans and so on, and the custody rulings of the court. So you can't take your child out of state except for according to certain guidelines, by permission, you know, vacations, etc. But people kidnap their own kids from the custodial parent all the time. So if someone kidnapped their child and brought them to the state of New York, does this mean that New York doesn't prosecute that either? Doesn't recognize any, you know, extradition responsibility with regard to that? So if you kidnap your child from, Wisconsin and bring them to the state of New York for, quote, gender-affirming care, what are the implications with respect to the kidnapping itself? So, I mean, yes, I would expect no less than insanity from Kathy Hochul. And I got, I'm going to start calling her Kathy the Ghoul Hochul, because this is a ghoulish thing. So notice how all this lawlessness and depravity is presented in the sort of airbrushed, soft focus of what they keep calling gender-affirming care. And I told you that's how the cohort, they co-opt the language. And part of how they've managed to bamboozle those who are bamboozable is through this disingenuous hijacking of the language and calling up, down, and backwards, forwards, and dark light. It's meant to sound all wonderful and caring, but be careful not to get hit in the head by all this flying virtue. They're not just signaling virtue, they're like catapulting virtue. And I've told you before, as I said, words mean stuff. Gender-affirming care is another ghoulish example of giving a barbaric practice a flowery-sounding name. And it's been done before. This isn't new. This isn't the first time. It's like calling gas chambers showers or calling genocide cleansing. The unreality cohort always covers dark intent with light and flowery and wonderful sounding language. So, no, this is not new. And no, we're not fooled by it. I mean, some people are. But that's why this is a battle of reality versus unreality, because we have to earnestly contend for reality. And clearly in the state of New York, that battle is being lost. Lee Zeldin, I think it was Lee Zeldin that ran against Hochul, and he very nearly won. Again, there are questions with respect to the integrity of the vote count in that election. And, I can't speak to it. All I know is that there's an awful lot of folk from New York moving here, from all parts of New York. And my wife is from upstate New York. She's been here 23 years, so, she's officially a Tennessean. But, I get it. I get it. So I do think, just to kind of put a fine point on it with respect to the Right Honorable Governor Hochul, I think she's trying to be Gavin Newsom, like without the perfect hair. You know what I mean? Gavin Newsom without the hair product. And who knows, maybe she's angling for the Democrat Party like beauty contest meets shark feed. It's going to be coming up, called their primary. Maybe this is her move. But either way, sort of the defiant disdain for and hostility toward like law and order and laws and law enforcement and other jurisdictions. That's classic cohort pathology. That goes back, that harkens back to the whole beginnings of the sanctuary cities with respect to illegal immigration. And it's funny how when people call their bluff on that, so wait a minute, why are you sending folks here? Well, but you said you were a sanctuary. So, we're sending people there for sanctuary. It's interesting how when people actually have to live their delusion, that they're not happy about it. But again, this is classic cohort pathology and, moved toward pathocracy. So the sort of dissociative penchant of blue states and cities for flushing themselves down the toilet, it continues. And it's fascinating. People will vote against their own self-interest, continue to vote for people that sell them down the river and flush their city down the toilet and crazy stuff. And I know folks who I love dearly, but they definitely suffer from this dissociative disorder. So I wonder, hey Mac.
Yeah.
Do you remember last week we had Bain on the show, And,
yes.
And he encouraged the people of Gotham to to stand up. Can we play that cut? Can we get him again?
Yeah, we can get him. Give me one. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. So I think that that the whole state of New York needs to heed the words of of the first populist, Bain, and they need to take action because they're coming for your pizza and your bagels and all sorts of crazy stuff. Because after all,
Gotham, take control. Take control of your city.
Take control of your city, and not we're not calling for violence, but we're just calling for people to rise up and stand up and do what you got to do. So Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Still time to call in to weigh in on, is it orange suit or clean getaway? Call in before it's all over. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dez Dickerson with you. Heading toward that 19th hole. We'll be right back. Ha 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 ha. Nothing like some tuned down 7-string guitars. That's what I say. And yeah, I've talked about it before, but there's definitely a connection between music and sort of our relative energy level, and there's a role for appropriate aggression to play, and yeah, again, not to wax biblical to too great a degree. I don't know if there is such a thing as too great a degree, but there were. Here's the thing about Jesus: he knew when to be a lion, and he knew when to be a lamb. And there's a time to be a lion. There's a time to turn some tables over. There's a time to kind of step to some people, verbally. Whitewashed tombs filled with dead men's bones. I mean, that was a great insult. That was far more impactful than a mama joke in that culture at that time. So anyway, music is important in that way. So we've been talking about, Governor Hochul in New York, but, we had a call from someone whose son has experienced in being involved in law enforcement right here in Middle Tennessee, right here in God's country, with the sort of creeping encroachment of an anti-police sentiment and an anti-enforcement sentiment with respect to law and order, with respect to laws on the books, with respect to those kinds of things. So in kind of looking back at our little impromptu pop quiz today, it would seem, and obviously this is all sort of, anecdotal. I mean, I'm not going to say this is some sort of scientific poll, but the mood of the people is one of, we don't think anything is ever going to happen. We're not expecting to see, justice fulfilled with respect to the various, perpetrators and instigators and alligators, whatever the case might be. And hopefully we'll all be pleasantly surprised. Hopefully champions will rise up who have the conviction and the courage of those convictions to take steps and to do what needs to be done. I think here's a big part of it. It's going to take people who have no regard for their own careers and their own legacy. And that's what statesmen really are. We used to use the term statesman. People don't even try to perpetrate and use it anymore because there really aren't any or very few. But the difference between statesmen and politicians is politicians are about themselves and they're about their own careers. And increasingly in our system, they've been more and more about their financial gain. And that's what politicians are. Well, what am I voting for? I don't know. Let me see which way the wind is blowing and see who the highest bidder is. But at the same time, statesmen, they're about the future. They're about the next generations. They're about doing what's right because it's right for the sake of whoever comes behind them. And that is the thing that it's going to take. It's going to take people that are willing to do that. I don't care if I get reelected. I don't care if people subscribe to my podcast. I don't care if people like me or not. I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to do it, or I'm going to give my life trying. That's what they did. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to that end, and we need that again. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson with you once again. A privilege and a pleasure to do so. I will be back with you Friday for Freak Out Friday. We'll see you then.